artificial intelligence tools. We tagged this as ways to optimize and maybe enhance your grasp around all the new AI tools that are proliferating. So the way we kind of approached this was to think about how we might assess a tool like this, like we would a library database. So if you're familiar with library databases, we're doing tools that would kind of complement that. So because we're here at Washington University, we have the privilege of having access to 788 different databases. So we don't need to rely on AI tools as much, but when you graduate, if some of you on here are current students, you'll lose that access. So we can also understand and appreciate how you might be looking to tools like this in the future to support you. So that's kind of how we took this project on. So we'll have a little bit of warm-up activity. We're going to ask you a question and participate in a poll, not a pool. We're going to give you a quick overview of some key AI tools. We're going to practice a little bit with using those tools, and then we'll ask you a question kind of recentering you back on how that experience went with you. And then we've got some additional resources we'll send you away with. So let's go to the poll. I will. Instructions, is that the?
Sorry, hold on.
Sorry about that. We'll get
to share it first. Okay, so I think if I post this in the chat, you should be able to go to that URL and then answer the poll.
Okay, so we've got, we're gonna pop the poll into our chat, and then you'll be able to
respond to it.
But
please let us know if it doesn't work, because I have never seen it done this way before, to be honest.
So Chris, if you're out there still, if you could try it and let us know.
Guys, it looks like that the voting needs to be turned on.
Okay, I did activate it. Can't play. Okay, well, how about instead you just answer in the Zoom chat, have you used AI tools for research before?
Yeah, easy peasy. Yes, yes, yes. You want to share you want that? Is that another question?
Or our next question is, if your answer is yes, which ones?
Yeah.
So feel free to share which ones you have used before.
DeepSeek. Open Evidence and Liner. Just changed her mind. All right, so Perplexity. So far, no one's named the ones that we're doing today. So hopefully we'll give you a little bit of a snapshot of some new tools. You can choose to incorporate those into your workflow, or say maybe it needs to cook a little bit more. So the overview of the tools, like I mentioned, when Sam and I kind of started thinking about this topic, we broke each of these tools down and said, okay, what does it do? Where does it pull its data from? What stage of the research process is it trying to support? And then what kind of benefits and challenges does it have? So we're kind of putting a critical lens on these, as we would with any database that we would look to subscribe to. We're also putting them through the same kind of paces. So in all of our research about just kind of this emerging field, seems the goal of all the tools is to increase efficiency and productivity. So we understand how important that is to everyone's research, just to be, as up to date and on top of their research, having tools that can kind of be working in the background to help alert us. Maybe when new research comes out, we don't want to be caught, sleeping on some new facets. So that's kind of what the tools that we looked at least their aims tend to be towards that. So hopefully you can see this graph. The first thing we did was to think about where is the data for each of these tools coming from. So a lot of them are API that are sitting on a corpus of text, whatever that may be. The three that we tended to pick this time all focus heavily on the sciences. So that's where kind of the open access research. So if you're familiar with the term open access, what a lot of these tools can do is to get those free materials that they can kind of harvest from online. The reason why we as librarians support databases is because we have the privilege of working on the other side of the paywall. So where these tools are right now is that really they can only either make publisher agreements or they can only get materials that are freely available online. So that's where things like the Semantic Scholar has 214 million papers from all fields of science. So they're really focused predominantly on the sciences. They also have some partnerships with scientific journals, indexes, and content providers. So for me, this is kind of one to watch for, the Semantic Scholar. Open Alex, which you can see kind of feeds into Research Rabbit. Research Rabbit also gets data from PubMed. So it's getting its data from Semantic Scholar. I guess Open Alex is really kind of just open access, scientific authors and institutions accessible in open access mode. So that's kind of understanding where they're getting their data, I think kind of helps you when you're trying to make those hard choices. There's a million tools. Which one do I choose? Does that make sense? Is there anything you want to add to that? Okay. So the first one that we looked at, like I mentioned, is the Semantic Scholar. So it's a free AI powered, free for now. And you'll notice that in many of these, there are pay options. This one is currently free. And I don't think there are too many moments where you hit up against a wall because you haven't paid a fee, but I'll show you others that do. Again, it comes from those 214 million papers in science, and it covers that search and discover phase of your scientific research. Some of the highlights that we noticed were that it makes it a little more transparent which materials are being more highly cited. The TLDR stands for too long didn't read. If you remember that back in the day, we would give just kind of a brief synopsis maybe of an article. So now we're doing that for this journal article too. So where someone might think that abstract is too long, I guess, to grind through, maybe I need a little shorter description of it so that I can decide if it's going to be something that works for me. And there's an option to ask this paper. So a lot of times we're querying the materials, so asking like questions of a PDF, and then it gives you the responses to it. Right now it's only English only, and you're going to find that with many of these tools. They are English language only materials, scientific literature only. And then again, we're looking at open access materials, but then they also will give citations for things that are paywalled. So you won't be able to get to the full text in the native interface, but because you are at Washington University, very likely you could find the full text of that. So here we pop into Semantic Scholar. I could create a sign-in. I'm not a huge fan of creating sign-ins for these. Some I've had to, some won't let you go any further without signing in, but this one will. So these change all the time. I kind of like these little, I don't know anything about copolymers, but it did a search on that term. And then this one that pops up at the top. So this is where they're trying to help you find which materials are the most highly cited. So you can do something like this in Google Scholar. You can do it in databases like Web of Science and Scopus. You can see how many citations you have. They're doing it for you here for free. And then also what it's also trying to do is give you more information about the citations like what kind of citations there are that are, yeah, following that paper. So we've got those options. Again, we can see how many papers are citing it. Here's their list of references, and then a related papers link. I'll try to find one that has, because the TLDR feature only works right now in computer science and biomedical domains, it's not available for everything. And it doesn't let you query every article either. So it's the kind of thing that if you search this next week, there may be more functionality. There may be more articles that have that TLDR feature. But what it's doing is, again, querying that corpus of open access and science literature to help find where the scholarship lies. So that's, anything else you want to say about that? It's not that great. Research Rabbit is a tool that I've actually taken to using a little bit sometimes when I have an item and I kind of want to see where it's situated in the literature. It's a more visual tool. So if you're more of a visually displayed kind of learner, it actually satisfies that. It's named Research Rabbit because of that feeling of kind of going down the rabbit hole. So when you're researching, and then I don't know if you've ever had this where you get to like the perfect article and you think, I want to do that again. I want to get right back to it, but I've gone down this rabbit hole and I have absolutely no idea how I started searching. It makes that more clear. It pulls again from that semantic scholar corpus and PubMed. And it touts itself as the Spotify for papers. People, things love being the Spotify of anything, right? It has a Zotero integration, which I'll show you. That visual search, it does require a login. So before you can move anywhere with it, you do have to log in. So that could be a deal breaker for some folks. And again, it's scientific only. So let's pop in. Pretend that we just logged in. All right, so I've got a few collections set up. Yesterday, I synced this AI workshop with a Zotero folder that I had. So all I had to do was kind of set up that integration, and then it pulled in my 18 citations that I had in this tool. So let's just click one. I think the first one is not great. The second one looks a little bit better. Okay, so what we're seeing here is it kind of works from the left to the right. So here's my list of papers and it's synced with Zotero. Then I can see more about the paper. And then what it's going off and doing is saying, okay, here's some similar works. Here's all the references. Here's more about these authors and other suggested authors. So each time I click on another area, it's going to move off to the right. So now I've got more of a graphical representation of my literature. So I can pull these around. I can see that there's color coding that makes sense here. So let me tell you, the green nodes represent publications already in the user's collection. The blue nodes are not in the collection. Darker shades of blue represent more recent publications. So all these things are color coded and you can kind of move them around. So it looks like Cox is citing Morley. I can look into Morley. I can go into their citations. I can look at other similar work. I can, again, this starts to get really like out in the nether regions, but it's also keeping you available to go all the way back to the beginning to remember how you got there. So that's the rabbit part of it, is that how did I land in this place? I can get back to it. And then if it gets too messy, looking at my nodes, I have more information then about who's kind of leaders in this field. I can also sort this usually, in this case, it doesn't look like it, but I could often put it on a timeline as well. So I can kind of see the years in which the literature. But if I don't want to look at that anymore, there are little red X's next to each one of them. So I can go back one step, look more at some of these other, gets really kind of kooky when you start dragging these around, but you can then look at all those connections, how they're made. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna close out of that. Again, I can get right back to my original chat. I have a chat. Thanks, Lori. Current one has a timeline. There's the timeline feature. So it's a little clunky, but it kind of, at least on the vertical axis, kind of puts these things into a little more of a timeline feature. So thank you, Lori. All right, so that's our research rabbit. It wants to help you do gap identification. So looking for citation networks to uncover areas where maybe there's unexplored research or it's kind of ripe for inquiry, tracking academic trends, preparing for publications so you can keep your references current by enabling the alerts. So you could have this set up to be kind of feeding you alerts as new things are added. And then lets you kind of work with co-authors or teammates too on your research. So I could be working in a collection that has been shared with me. No one's working with me yet, but that's Research Rabbit in a nutshell. And then the last one that we tried to look at was Cite. Cite lets you discover and evaluate literature through smart citation. It really has done its due diligence, I think, on trying to partner with publishers. So they're really trying to be certain that they're not just looking at sources like on paywall, which would be open access, but also kind of pulling in PubMed, which we hope will continue with the government shutdown, and Wiley, Sage, some of the other bigger journal publishers. It requires a login though, and so I'm going to show you a video instead because I don't want to pay for access to it. I don't want to set up a free 7-day trial. So think about that before you move forward too.
Even if something was used for reference 500 times, or its claims supported in each of those instances, overtake no research indicate disagreement with their claims. How do others interpret the study and what they say about it? So in terms of qualification, it will prove patient to create qualification, to make a technical research article, and practice based where they make a reference to another paper. Our system classifies specific statements as security, or contract to exciting claims. The end result is a vast network with different research functions without several.
Hey, Melissa, the audio of the video is not coming through to us.
At all?
No.
Okay.
I could hear it, but it was really garbly.
Oh, sorry about that.
You
It's
have
okay.
the audio input set up to be the speaker in the room rather than the speaker on your laptop. So we're hearing the laptop through the speaker in the room.
Okay, well, that's okay. I don't think we need to belabor that. We'll share these slides with you all and you can play that at your leisure.
You look forward to it. Okay, I'm going to very briefly talk about some benefits and challenges of AI, and then we're going to get into some practice time. So a couple benefits of AI, of course, are using AI in your research process. It can add efficiency and productivity to your process. It can simplify parts of the research process and kind of an emphasis on parts, just because there's obviously always going to be parts that require a human to be doing things rather than AI. And then as we kind of saw in these examples, there are features that are not found in standard databases. So those analyzing and summarizing papers, the visualization tools like we saw with Research Rabbit, collaboration tools, things like that, that a standard library database just haven't caught up to that kind of technology yet. So this can kind of be reasons why you would want to incorporate AI into your process. And then of course, there are also challenges. I'm sure you've heard of many of these before, so I'll just go over them quickly. With generative AI specifically, there's of course the risk of plagiarism, hallucinations, misinformation, and programming bias. We see these hallucinations a lot, especially with students using like ChatGPT. They'll come in asking, can you find me this paper that I got from ChatGPT, and the paper just doesn't exist at all. So that's always something to look out for. Data privacy concerns, paywalls. So even though a lot of these AI research tools do use open access data, they could still be scraping publisher websites so that when you search them, articles are coming up that you don't immediately have access to. And they might be articles that we have access to in a library database instead. There are reproducibility problems. So as AI software gets updated, or if you were using a generative AI, if you add that into your research, so you write it up in your paper, you publish it, if someone goes back and tries to reproduce the search that you did, they might not be able to. And so then that represents an issue there. Of course, with the limited data sources that they use, you're not getting the full picture of all the research that might be out there. And this isn't just an AI thing. This is something that we deal with our regular databases. So Melissa and I, we do a lot of systematic reviews within the library, and we always search multiple databases so that we can try to find all the literature that we possibly can. So just something to keep in mind. Don't rely on just one AI tool when you're doing your research. Use that along with library databases, or use multiple. And then lastly, of course, the environmental impact, high power and water usage. And if you've been paying attention to local news, I'm sure you've seen recent stories about the data centers that are trying to be built, and kind of the public response to those in terms of their high power and water usage.
The Armory, actually, I never went to the Armory when it was open for, it had games and things. Now they're talking about turning that into a data center. Yeah. So, yeah, there.
But yeah, so that is what we have presentation wise. You'll now have some time to choose one of the AI tools that we presented to you. If there's one you've been wanting to check out, you can take time to look at that. We'll give you like 20 minutes.
Can I ask a question, please, before you turn us loose?
Yeah.
This is Chris asking the question. It sounds like these tools that you're highlighting are really best used for the sciences.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm assuming then there are tools out there that maybe are better for, I don't know, like other like other fields, or maybe like kind of research basics type of things.
Do you want to show that spreadsheet right now, maybe?
No, if you're planning to do that later, I can just wait. That's fine.
Well, we can do that now, Chris. So is it just this product list that you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's an organization you might have heard of called Ithaca SNR, and they're trying to keep a pretty comprehensive list of all these tools. So you can understand it's an ever-evolving dartboard, and I trust this organization to actually keep on top of this. So they've broken it down into different classifications. So I'm just going to go to the writing tools. They do a breakdown. They'll tell you, if it's free to use, if there's a purchasing model, and then you can kind of get a little more information about it. So this is kind of the tool that we were using to kind of base like a little bit of to ground ourselves in the tools that are available. So we can share this list in the chat and give you a chance to kind of pour through it. If you want to use some of these tools, you might find some that are more literature based. Although if you kind of think of how the publishing world works, I'm going to bet there aren't very many English lit or American lit authors who are publishing open access. So if you're relying on these tools to get access to whatever they can kind of freely, that's probably not.
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, what you just said. But I was also thinking about more like the type of tool that it would be like talking to a friend to help you do research. If you're trying to think about like what your ideas might be, and
yeah, and that's probably more in the Gen AI area, the generative AI, where you're kind of querying a chat bot. That's not exactly what these tools are doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, feel free to look through this list or practice with one of the tools we showed you. And if any questions do come up during that time, feel free to jump on the mic or put them in chat. And yeah.
And I'll put links to the 3 tools, or at least the 2 tools that we looked at. And you can more easily get to those. And ask questions too as you try them out.
So since we are losing a few people, I'm just gonna pop our final reflection question into the chat. You can feel free to answer it when you're through with whatever you're practicing. And yeah, and then don't forget, we do have a couple of additional resources to show you. Just in a couple of minutes, so. No, we talk the same. Not everybody. I don't know.
Hey, Melissa, looks like we've got a couple comments in the chat in regards to the reflection question that you posted. So Sarah said, I have found articles on Semantic Scholar through Google searches, but I've never started with their website.
Sarah, did you try searching natively today? Did you find any more functionality? I just found an article that had the TLDR feature. It's kind of hit or miss. Did you
Yeah,
try searching it today?
I do a lot of like Embase and PubMed based searches, but I've never tried to see, like, it doesn't seem like it uses the same type of mesh or like M-tree terms that you would use in those, but it seemed like it could be another case of like, if it's a rare topic or if the articles could be a little bit hidden, it might be a really good option if you're like having trouble finding things the traditional way.
Exactly. Yeah. Are you from the med school?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of hand searching, maybe kind of way where, yeah, we're just kind of making sure we're kind of hitting all the nooks and crannies where things might be hidden. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, my son's a sophomore in college, so we talk a lot about AI and things. And I always tell him, like, it's fine to let it be one of your tools in your toolkit, but it's not your only tool in the toolkit. So yeah, it's nice to know that maybe some of these might be for us just extra support.
Yeah, I don't know why it never occurred to me to go directly to them. They're always popping up in Google search results, and it never occurred to me that they had a search engine.
Right. And that's the thing about, I think, that Semantic Scholar, where a lot of APIs are being built on their corpus, is because it is such a large thing, and then others can kind of come along and harvest their information to, they're each kind of trying to put their own personal needs. Well, when I was in school, because it really does seem like it's more of a, like, academics who now don't have access to resources. It's like when I was doing my research, it would have been really nice to be able to follow the citations more easily. And then it's like they kind of come back and do it this way. So it's an interesting phenomenon to watch these different products use the same source of information, but then display them in different ways.
Well, and I know a lot of the more general search engines like ChatGPT, there's chronically issues with it hallucinating studies. I don't know if we're going to see it provide better outputs with something that's sort of designed in the science space. but that's always been my caveat. I tell my students, I know you're going to probably use ChatGPT at some point, but check their work.
Exactly.
I have seen so many times where I'm like, that's not right. That's not even close to right. And I have to correct the students, and I ask them, like, have you used a ChatGPT or something like that? Because this is not even close to right.
Mhm, mhm. And that's where I feel like site, might end up making their money. What they're trying to do is help you see that like you're citing these articles, but like 10 of them are retracted. Did you know that? So they're kind of trying to put a little more clarity around the kind of research that you're using. So not only do you have to worry about hallucinations, but you have to worry about papers that are in legitimate journals that have been retracted and you just didn't know it. So I think, there's some kind of good thinking there, really, in this time of faulty faulty research. I don't want to say, but it's yeah.
But no, I want to make sure that the students know how to use these tools as like a scalpel, not like a hammer, like you're using it to refine ideas, to get you thinking, but don't rely on, I don't think we're there yet where we're relying on them entirely, but I had no idea there were that many. I'm familiar with a handful, but I'm clearly not familiar with like 90% of what's out there.
Oh, and that's where we were with this. I made this a goal for my, my own personal development this year was to learn more about AI tools. And I'm just immediately drowning, trying to get as much information as I could. I'm like, I don't even know who the heavy hitters are. So yeah, it's proliferating so quickly, and to just step out of it and say, I'm just going to wait for this is not super safe. It's moving ahead with or without you.
Well, and I feel like that research rabbit, that's the one I want to keep playing around with, because I do feel like it's got a potential. I like the visual representation. I think a lot of students who are new to science and scientific research could really benefit from, if they feel overwhelmed by going directly to PubMed, something like that is a little bit more user-friendly, hopefully, and may give them like a way to step into it without feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of what we do is like, okay, when you're in a database, you find one good article and then you mine that article for everything you can. I'm looking at the subject headings, I'm looking at the keywords. What if I had one good article and I put it into Research Rabbit and then it showed me, kind of visually everyone who's citing this article, every related author, it's kind of powerful in that way that like I just need one good source of information and I can kind of expand from there.
Yeah. No, that's the one that I've tried the Semantic Scholar. Now I'm going to try to play around with that rabbit one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny. I didn't know until doing this research that like, I kind of think of research like a rabbit hole. Like, how did I end up here? And I have the perfect article, but I couldn't recreate this again. And I was actually kind of glad when they referenced that, like, yeah, it's a rabbit hole. You go down these paths and you're not really sure once you get to the end, how you got there. Anybody else have anything else to share? Lori did. Hey, so Lori used Semantic Scholars for some of the Brown School's faculty authors and saw that some much older citations showed up. So it's not just the most recent. They are working with publishers, they're not just getting everything they can through open access. So that's where I feel like this one's kind of one to watch. Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to share out? We can kind of start to tie things up. Thanks, Chris. Way down to 7. The brave 7. All right. Did I go too far? All right, so when we share these slides out, you'll have access to that product tracker. And then Sam found a really good article that's in Nature about AI for research. There's also, because of, we showed these 3 tools, I found some information either from site's website that you can use. They've got videos on how to spend your money and use their tool. You've got a step-by-step guide to using Research Rabbit, which I actually thought was quite helpful. And then the Journal of Medical Library Association put out a piece in 2018 already, back then, on Semantic Scholar. AI has been around since 1950, 1920. Go back to my notes here. It was a gentleman, I don't know how to pronounce their name, but they did a chess playing machine to test the possibilities of a general automatics theory. It used automation and algorithm to dictate its moves. So this stuff has been going on for a long time. I was kind of surprised at kind of the history and the trajectory, because we've seen this proliferation here in the last, probably since 2022. So you've got some resources there. Again, we'll send this out. We can try to clip the video maybe a little bit and not give all that downtime and send that out to folks. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. I guess you can use the Ask Us feature of the library's website. You can come to the Brown School Library, where we're happy to give you our opinions. What else? Anything else you want to add, Sam?
Thank you all for attending.
Yeah, thank you. We can stick around to answer any questions, but anybody else wants to go, this is pretty much the gist of it. But thanks so much.